So what do you
Doing
think
okay.
about
Four,
that's great.
three,
that? I think so
two.
too.
On Tuesday, November 2nd, New Yorkers go to the polls to elect a whole new city government. The mayor, public advocate, controller, borough president, and all city council members are up for election. This campaign is being hard fought by all sides, as everyone agrees the future of the city is at stake in this race. I'm Caroline Greenberg. Welcome to JNN's Election 93 special. Jews in New York have traditionally voted and run as Democrats. Recent polls all show a fundamental realignment taking place, with a majority indicating that they will probably vote for another party this time around. With us to discuss this and the major issues facing us today are Howard Barbanel, City Council candidate in Manhattan's 9th District. Mr. Barbanel is a business person, the founder of a Barbanel Wines, who spent most of his career as a publisher. Elaine Reiss, a top executive with the Council of Better Business Bureaus, who has had a long career as an executive at major advertising agencies. And Michael Schlossman, an attorney who has worked on several campaigns, including Bill Coppell's recent race for Congress. All three live on the Upper West Side, all three are Jewish, and all three are running as Republicans. Ms. Reiss, many Jews are running as Republican candidates this year. Is this an unusual phenomenon?
No, it's in the wonderful tradition of what Jews have done in this state. Jacob Javits, who was our state senator for many years, ran as a Republican and a liberal. Louis Lefkowitz, who was the state attorney general, was a Republican. And one of the borough presidents in Manhattan was a Republican, Stanley Isaacs. Mm-hmm. It's not unusual. It's really quite more the usual thing. And those were very successful liberal Jews who understood what it was to run a successful government. The Democrats, unfortunately, have lost that sense of what's necessary to run a government that's receptive to what citizens want.
Just to continue in a lot of the tradition, Jewish New Yorkers should be voting Roby this year?
Absolutely. There is no other choice, given the state of the city.
And what do you think about Crown Heights? Does that play a major role?
I think Crown Heights should play a role not because it's one ethnic group over another, but because it shows the vacuum of leadership, both at the level of the mayor and our own borough president, who was able to go up to Washington Heights and was not visible in Crown Heights.
Exactly.
I think also what's happened is that Jews have traditionally aligned themselves with the Liberal Party, or more on the liberal side of the political spectrum. And what's happened with candidates like the three of us is that if you go down the litmus test of social issues, we pretty much see eye to eye with our Democratic counterparts. But what's happened with us as Republicans is now we not only offer our social policy, but we offer an economic agenda to go along with that, and that's very interesting to people. So that's where Howard, Elaine, and I are different than most Republicans. And
In fact, if I could add to that, at a lot of subway stations, people ask me, what are you running as? And I always tell them I'm running as a progressive Republican. And they say, well, what does that mean? I said, well, I'm liberal on social issues and tough on money.
What we are is fiscally conservative and
Right.
socially liberal.
That's
and
right.
we are really part of the Republican wing that Jacob Javits and Louis Lefkowitz stood for. And Louis Lefkowitz, as state attorney general, was really very much the advocate on behalf of the citizen, but he was still a Republican. He didn't waste money. Our current city government wastes money and doesn't provide the quality of life that everybody deserves.
Okay. So, Mr. Barbanel, you represent a district zigzagging from the Upper West Side into Morningside Heights and into West Harlem. What are the major issues in your district, and what are you hoping to do to resolve them?
Well, the major issues right now are very much quality of life issues. You can't walk down the block without being accosted and assaulted by the quote-unquote homeless, people who are substance abusers, mentally ill, etc. 15,000 of them have been dumped indiscriminately in our district without any regard for what would be done for them. And the crime issue is really paramount to people, whether they're living on the Upper West Side, Morningside Heights, or West Harlem. In addition, in West Harlem, there is a sense, especially on 125th Street, that the sidewalk vendors got a raw deal from the Dinkins administration. On a Saturday and a Sunday, the streets are just jam-packed with shoppers and with sidewalk vendors. It's the flowering of black entrepreneurship. These people are working hard, trying to make a living, and they're being banished from the streets and being sent to the gulag, really, to exile on 126th Street in an empty lot. And I think that the city can do better. Back in the 30s, they created the Essex Street Market for the Jewish and Italian peddlers on the Lower East Side by creating subsidized rents for them there. And if you walk along Lenox Avenue, Powell Avenue, Douglas Avenue, 135th Street, the city owns dozens and dozens of empty, vacant storefronts, stores that have been vacant for years, and an Essex Street Market could be set up to provide subsidized rents, to allow these people to become taxpayers, to give something back to the city, and to encourage this black entrepreneurship. And those are some of the key issues facing us.
Okay.
There's an enormous problem that we can see throughout the Manhattan, and that's the fact that we've lost jobs. This is a city administration that doesn't understand job creation. Howard just talked about one of them, which is within, since I'm running borough-wide, is really dealing with city-owned property. But it's more than the city-owned property not being used for small stores and helping small stores. We do everything that is counterproductive for the small businesses. We tax them, we fine them. We really are making it very difficult for anybody to earn a living within the borough of Manhattan. And the city has lots of in-rent property. It could have people come in and either restore it by building houses or build small units, 1, 2, 3, 4 family houses. The same thing Freddie Farrar is doing in the Bronx with city and state money. Somehow Ruth Messenger has not been able to do here. That would help us with some of the homeless. We could provide housing and provide jobs for some of these people. There is no plan, there's no sense of what's necessary to make an urban center work. And all of us, including the Jews, are being harmed by this. We've got small businesses, we're paying taxes and fines, and so we're not benefiting, and what's more, everything that's supported by the city isn't benefiting. The schools are in dreadful situation. There really is, it's all part of a spiral that's spiraling down.
Right, it is.
She just hit on a little bit of the extreme problems that small businesses have setting up in New York City, and one of the proposals that I'm making in my campaign
Is that the National Protection Act
no,
you're working on?
No, that's also something that we're working on.
I want to hear about
Sure.
that later.
But we've set up an idea to have one-stop shopping for businesses when they want to open up their doors. Right now, when someone wants to start a small business in New York City, they literally have to unfold a map and figure out what departments they need to go to, what paperwork they need to fill out, what checks they have to give to who. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we had a Department of Business Services and Regulations, a one-stop shopping where a small business owner could go and fill out all the paperwork, get it done in one day, so he doesn't have to take a week off from work or hire a lawyer.
It definitely
and
would
get
be
everything
good.
done.
Okay, let's go on to something else. Mr. Schlossman, your district runs from 55th Street north to encompass most of the Upper West Side. So now tell me a little bit about the passage of the Neighborhood Protection Act, because I hear you're active in getting that done.
The Neighborhood Protection Act is an act that was co-sponsored by Councilman Charles Millard and Councilman Walter McCaffrey. And what this is a zoning ordinance that zones adult video and bookshops 500 feet from each other and 500 feet from houses of worship, schools, and other vital areas. This is not a First Amendment issue, which my opponent has turned it into. We are not saying that this speech should not take place. We are not saying that these enterprises should not be around. We're just saying that they should be a reasonable distance apart to keep them from bunching up, and that we should also protect our children and keep them away from places of worship to make the community have a better quality of life. Now, my opponent, Ronnie Eldridge, is one of only 3 council people not to sign on to this bill. We are proposing that I'm demanding that this bill be enacted so that, we had a rally yesterday on Amsterdam Avenue between 73rd and 74th Streets. And we had a wonderful turnout, people in the community coming out and saying, well, why is this video store still here, this XXX video store? I thought we signed this petition. I thought something was going to happen. I said, but your council person does not believe in this bill, and that's why this video store is still here.
Okay, let's go on to schools now. How would you change the Department of Education?
First of all, we need to, I endorse Rudy Giuliani's idea for borough boards. We need to decentralize the central school board and get the power back in the hands of the community to do with it what they will. I'll give you a perfect example of why our education system is so bad. I have a very good friend who's a school teacher out in Howard Beach, and she gets $150 a year for school supplies. $40 of that has to go to the principal in order so that they can make copies for the school. It's like a collective program. So that leaves her now with $110 to buy school supplies for the whole year. they're only allowed to make 4 photocopies per week. So if she uses up those 4 photocopies on Monday, she has nothing
That's a lot
for
of
the rest
trouble.
of the week. So what she has done is she's dug into her salary, which is wonderful of her to do, but we shouldn't ask our teachers to dig into her
Right, well,
salary.
they're
That-
getting paid a lot more than our teachers are
Exactly.
getting paid here too.
Well,
Which
you
is
know,
a-
one of the,
But there's a
Major
there's a
problem.
real big issue here, and it really is a portion of Rudy's plan, and that is that the money is going to central administration. I mean,
That's right.
Ruth Messenger has a member of the board, as borough president, has one of the memberships on the board of education at 110 Livingston Street. Ruth and the current borough president, Clara Schulman from Queens, have talked about decentralization of the board as well. The problem is that they don't put a cap on its cost. Rudy Giuliani said, that's fine, but we want to take the money that's centralized and push it down to the schools. That's where it should be. It's now being absorbed with administration all the way through.
it should be noted that we have a $7 billion school budget. $7 billion. This is bigger than the budgets of some cities across this country, some states across this country. Fully half of this money is being spent on administration,
show.
and we have crumbling school buildings. You just witnessed the asbestos scandal, and that's just the tip of the iceberg on how badly maintained our school buildings are. Our kids are using 20-year-old textbooks. Our teachers are underpaid compared to their colleagues in the suburbs, and our kids are not learning the latest high-tech skills like computers.
And yet, per capita, we're spending more than every other place in the state. So we're spending
That's right.
about $7,500 per student, and you heard the story here about the
Yes.
teacher in Howard Beach. We could tell you stories throughout the entire
It's getting, but the bottom line is that it's getting sucked down into a giant black hole. And you
Let's
know,
take
when
it
a
back
spaceship
out.
goes into a black hole, there's no emerging from it. And this is where the money goes, it just gets poured in. The other thing that Rudy has been speaking about is that the budget right now, the city gives the Board of Ed a $7 billion blank check. All right, and there's no real control. And what we would like to do, especially in the city council, is to parcel it out in small increments to make sure, well, you come for $100 million for this and $50 million for that and $75 million for the other thing, because frankly speaking, $7 billion in a blank check with no accountability and no performance criteria is a big problem.
But in
Now
order to
it's
do
supposed to
that,
help.
we've got to go to the state and have the law changed. And in order to do that, we need a borough president that understands what the law should be and advocates that the city council be given greater power over it. The city council currently doesn't have that power. It needs it.
Now let me ask you more about homelessness in your district, which is just a huge problem.
Well,
What do you want to do with
Well, the
this?
core of the problem, Pete Hamill wrote an excellent article in New York Magazine a few weeks ago where he identified the problem correctly. It's not a shelter problem, it's a health problem. The city's own Commission on the Homeless has revealed that fully 50% of the single men who are homeless in the city are carrying tuberculosis, which is a highly contagious disease. Now, it used to be in old days that, especially at Ellis Island, when our ancestors came in, if you were diagnosed with TB, you were put into quarantine. Now, today, TB is curable. We have vaccines and antibiotics. We should be declaring a health emergency and putting these people in quarantine to get at the root of this TB problem. We have our kids on the streets. Also, a huge percentage of these people are HIV positive, and although we unfortunately have not found a cure for AIDS, these people still should be put in a medical facility where we can ease their suffering and they can end their last days in dignity. And finally, an overwhelming majority of these people, unfortunately, are either substance abusers, alcohol or drug abusers, or they are mentally ill, or worse, they're both. And the problem is that in the state, we've gone from having 80,000 beds in mental hospitals to having 10,000 beds today. The state will tell you it's a compassion issue to have the mental health dealt with in the neighborhood, but really it's a budgetary issue and a meanness of spirit on their part, because we're not allocating the resources towards this mental health problem. These people must be put into facilities where they will get psychological care, social work, drug treatment, et cetera, and so forth. Now, the city's budget on the homeless has gone from $28 million to $500 million, from 28 employees to 3,000 employees in the Homeless Commission, yet the state's Court of Appeals, the highest court, has declared the city's homeless policy to be both immoral and illegal, and is holding four deputy mayors in contempt of court for not solving this problem. And clearly what we're dealing with is a lack of ideas. And finally, I will tell you that in terms of single mothers who are homeless and living in these welfare hotels, really flea bag hotels, where we're paying up over $18,000 a year to house them in substandard facilities and rooms, this money, instead of going to enrich rapacious landlords, should be spent to build and reconstruct housing throughout the city where the city is the largest landlord, and for $18,000 a year, I think we can manage to provide everyone with a nice apartment.
The problem is a very complicated one. Part of the reason that we have as many homeless and as mentally ill is that the city is very compassionate, and that in fact this is an area where people have been attracted because of the benefits that the city government gives rather than the state government and the federal government. It is really a regulation nightmare as to why some monies can be dedicated to Tier 2 housing, which are the hotels that Howard was just talking about, and why that Tier 2 housing money can't go into building and reconstruction housing. What you need are people who understand the problems and who ask for the regulatory change to benefit New York City, as opposed to accepting the regulations that may be very good for Omaha, Nebraska, but don't work in New York City, where we really don't want to have people dying in the streets or pushing them out to some other
Or
neighborhood.
harassing people either.
We want to help, but what we need is a reasonable way to help them. Part of the concern in the city is concerned about individual safety. I'm running for office because a woman who worked for Ogilvy was killed walking her dogs on the Upper West Side by a homeless man. Now, it is clearly an allegation that he did it, although I believe that he did plead guilty.
Okay.
What we have to deal with is really being able to take the mentally ill off the streets. We don't need any more Larry Hogues. We don't need any more Billy Boggs. We have to deal with legislative change, and neither of the three of us can do it, but we can use our bully pulpits to demand it from those who can do it. You asked before about Republicans. That's why we're running as Republicans. The Democrats are happy with the situation as it exists now. We need change.
We definitely do. Okay. Ms. Reiss, the city's budget is now almost $32 billion, with taxes and spending up across the board. How can this be brought under control?
By looking to where the money goes. It leaks out. We are paying an enormous amount for middle-level bureaucracy. Michael talked about one-stop shopping for businesses. You don't have to, it's for the last 20 years, in order to get a building done, you needed to purchase the services of an expediter. You want to build anything in New York City and get it through the Department of Building, you've got to hire somebody to move the briefcase with the plans, because you only get 20 minutes and then you have to wait in line again for the next 20 minutes. That's not a way to run a business or a city. That's duplicated. We have departments that duplicate. We have people who pass paper. We have people who don't contract with the city, people who won't even enter with competitive contracts because it costs them too much, and then they have to wait in line to get paid. Anybody in business will tell you that there's lots of money there that can be squeezed out of that, because what you have is a middle-level bureaucracy that's soaking the money up. We have more money than most states in the union do. We have more money than most nations in the world do.
It's got to be used right.
It's got to be used correctly. We don't need any more taxes. We need less taxes. We need to find out where that money is going and use it properly.
We do.
I will tell you that just to give you a sense of perspective on this, the budget of the state of New Jersey is $16 billion. Our budget's $32 billion, and no one can say that the quality of life isn't a little bit better over there on the other side of the Hudson, and yet they're in a tax revolt over the fact that their budget's $16 billion.
And ours is continually going up,
ours is going up. Our budget is up $6 billion since the last year of the Koch administration, and the problem is we have a city council where no one votes no. Everyone votes yes. 90% and more of the votes in the city council are unanimous, and people say if there's another spending bill, people say yes, 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 yes. No one says, can we do it for less? Can we try another idea? Are we getting adequate performance for the money?
And you all want to try.
But I think more importantly, because some of the viewers may be skeptical about whether it can happen, I want to look at the state of Massachusetts, because the governor there, a Republican, ran on just the same thing the three of us are saying here, which is there's more than enough money and I'm going to decrease the budget. And guess what? Bill Weld continues to deliver services and has decreased the state budget. And it was only $17 billion to start.
Good. Okay. Now, Mr. Barbanel, tell me about this term limits and city voting habits, which you've been working on.
The problem there is that we have people making a lifetime career out of being in politics in this city. In fact, there's a very generous pension plan for city elected officials because it just assumes they're going to be in office for 20 or 30 years. as a consequence of this one-party rule that we've had for almost 3 decades now, we have a situation where people feel that once they've been elected the first time, they have a lifetime tenure, and that consequently they do not have to listen to the voters, they don't have to answer to their constituents, they're just on that ballot and they're going to get reelected and anointed year after year after year, and so that it doesn't matter how they vote in the council, it doesn't matter how they vote in the various boards that they sit on. What I'm proposing here is that if 2 terms are good enough for the President of the United States, then 2 terms ought to be good enough for the mayor, for the controller, for borough president, and for the 51 members of the city council. Let's get rid of the professional politicians. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a professional politician, and I think what we should do is allow people from the community, neighbors, people who are constituents, to have the opportunity to enter into the political process so that the people have comprehensive representation by their peers and not by the professional hacks.
And Howard, everybody can vote on that
That's
in this
right.
election.
That's
really on the ballot.
That's right.
And it's on the ballot for the mayor. I absolutely believe that you should not have anything more than 2 terms. It's just really put us all to the test, and then up and out, because that's the way. We have an entrenched bureaucracy who believes as kommt. They really believe as kommt ze zegt. That's not the way to deal with this.
That's right. I just want to point out that my opponent, Ronnie Elders, has not signed on to this idea at all. And I'm very much in support of the 2 terms and out idea.
Okay, Ms. Reiss, what do you think can be done about the poor state of the public hospitals?
Well, it's very interesting now that there really is a new health care proposal, but more importantly, that the poor have been given the opportunity to take their Medicaid to non-public hospitals. Suddenly, hospitals like Metropolitan Hospital realize they've got to compete for the money even from the group that they believed was the source of their revenue. And they've discovered they have to deliver better service. I think when we talk about privatization, and all 3 of us have, we're not talking about handing over city services to somebody and saying, go do it. We're talking about the world of competition, which is the world of business that the 3 of us come out of. And we're saying, let's have bids. Let's see how it can be done. Let's look at how to make it better. Right now, the people delivering services in the city hospitals don't understand that they're in the service business.
If I could just interject to illustrate that point, we have a scenario where women wait a month approximately for a mammogram and approximately the same amount of time for an abortion, just to illustrate the point, in a public hospital.
But in addition to which, we have all sorts of scandals where they have not actually, the Pap test was misdiagnosed, and so they've got to go back.
19,000 of them or something?
So we're dealing with a bureaucracy that doesn't care. The way to make people care is to have competition, to believe that they may well be in jeopardy, that this is not something they will continue to have. The dreadful part of it is that we're pumping enormous amounts of money into the hospital system, and we're not getting the service out. We're using emergency rooms to take care of the common cold for 2- and 3-year-olds. We ought to be having prenatal service and service to the children as it used to be with nurses in the public schools. The money's there. It's been taken out for unknown bureaucracies in the middle. We've got to go back to delivering the service. We ought to have Band-Aids in the emergency room and not have to worry about the fact that we can't buy them because we've had to put paper together.
Okay, now for all 3 of you, tell me why you're running for your respective offices and why people should vote for you. We'll start with you, Mr. Schlossman.
I'm running for office because I've had enough on the West Side. I moved to the West Side to go to law school, and I've decided to stay there for the rest of my life. And I can't stand the way things are, and I hear on the street every day, Michael, if it doesn't get better, I'm going to leave. And by that they mean 2 major issues. They mean crime, and they mean the tax burden on themselves. And I finally decided that instead of sitting on the sideline and complaining, I was going to get off the chair and actually do something about it. Now, we're optimistic about this campaign. If it doesn't work this time, we'll get them next time. But we have to get our message across that young people need to get involved in politics. People who are already involved in politics on the West Side need to be a little bit more open-minded and accept someone like the 3 of us. And we really need to take control of our government again and tell our leaders what we want and to have them be more responsive to the people. And that's what we're all about. None of us are professional politicians. We're in this because we care about this.
Okay. Okay, Ms. Reiss?
Well, I've grown up in the city. I love it. I raised my children here. My granddaughter lives here. It's a city that isn't what I remember.
Right.
It is a city now that has lost, to some extent, its sense of compassion. I think part of it is Mayor Dinkins talking about a mosaic, which has hard edges, rather than the melting pot in which we all understood what ethnic group we were and understood that we had to help each other. I have not been a politician. I'm really not a politician. I'm like the person sitting and watching this program, a nice Yiddish Baba who wants to be sure, that this is a city for the next generation.
Okay, I know we all do. And
yes, I would say just finally, I would say that my inspiration is Robert Kennedy, who when asked when he was running for Senate and when he was running for President of the United States, why are you running? And he said, because I think that we as Americans can do better. And one of the reasons why I'm running is because I believe that we as New Yorkers can do better. I think we deserve better. We pay the highest taxes in the country for some of the worst municipal services, and we deserve to have first-class services. And I know in my district, we deserve first-class services north of 96th Street, not just south of it.
Okay, thank you. The issues are complex and varied. New Yorkers can't say they don't have choices this year. How the city is run over the next 4 years will be determined this election day, Tuesday, November 2nd. The only way you can have a voice in shaping the city's future is if you vote. If you'd like to contact the Schlossman campaign, their number is 212-496-8219. The Reiss campaign at 212-599-1200. And the Barbanel campaign at 212-330-0744. For JNN, I'm Caroline Greenberg. Thanks so much for joining us today. And don't forget to vote on November 2nd.